To discuss with me here in the studio, I'd like to welcome Behnam Ben Taleblu, Senior Fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thank you so much for being with us today. How much do you think this raises the chances of seeing U.S. military action on Iran?
Well, great to be with you, Claire. Listen, I think this significantly gives the president more options, but it also gives the president more flexibility as well. Flexibility to kind of create more leverage and have a sort of Damocles over the regime, flexibility to push for some kind of diplomatic off-ramp, although I find that to be particularly dubious given that this regime has killed reportedly over 30,000, as well as more options in terms of decapitation, defanging, and real military options against the Islamic Republic.
So it's a show of force.
Significant show of force.
Now, when Trump weighed in on these protests, he threatened to come to their support if the regime continued to crack down. Now that those have seemed to dissipate, this doesn't look like it's about defending protesters anymore. What is it about?
Well, I still do think it should be about defending protesters. The president wasn't talking about the nuclear program. He wasn't talking about the ballistic missile program. He wasn't talking about the regime's transnational terrorist apparatus. 8 or 9 times, depending on the print media or social media that you were looking at, the president talked about holding those engaging in the crackdown responsible. And if the U.S. did not have the sufficient force posture in the region to be able to do that, now it looks like it's making up for that. The question is, as the protests have thinned, what is the U.S. overall political goal here? Is it deterrence by punishment? Is it to try to drive the next round of protests? Is it to simply impose cost or just make its credibility much more in the eyes of other authoritarian adversaries?
Which of those options do you think it is?
I think there's no way out but through in the Middle East. Americans have been voting generation after generation from the middle of the Iraq War to find a way out. But there is no path out of the desert for America. There is no peaceful exit for Uncle Sam other than dealing with the world's foremost state sponsor of terrorism. And by dealing, I mean actually helping put an end to that, working with the most pro-American and most pro-Israeli population in the heartland of the Middle East. Now, that is fundamentally regime change and something the Trump administration doesn't seem too keen on. But then again, the Islamic Republic has a bounty on the president's head, and they're not too keen on America after been chanting for 47 years, death to America.
So in your view, nothing, if I understand correctly, nothing short of regime change would reach that goal?
Or any process that can help you get to regime change. The president has a policy of maximum pressure that's helping to get Iranian oil exports to a certain level that they can actually put a squeeze on the regime's repressive apparatus. That needs to be stepped up significantly. If he parries that policy of maximum pressure with a policy of maximum support, potentially getting internet back online for Iranians, that would be critical. Coming up with a way to actually find a way around the regime's digital Iron Curtain, that would be critical. But it's all about, helping to flip the script on the Ayatollahs and level the playing field between the state and the street.
And what about Iran's nuclear program? Obviously, these strikes last summer from Israel and the United States, them claiming it's done significant damage. But do you think that this is also about getting Iran to come to the table on that?
Well, the question is, if the president was as successful as he said he was with respect to the nuclear strikes last summer, the question is, what is there really left to negotiate over? There's 400 kilograms allegedly missing of uranium. I don't think that should be the regime's lifeline. I think what we should be doing right now is pressing the regime to come clean and restoring IAEA access, to have the Islamic Republic live up to its outstanding nuclear obligations, not be able to use this as a bargaining chip to fight to live another day.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us with your insights today. Very much appreciate it. We've been speaking with Behnam Ben Taleblu with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.